Beer in Canada feels familiar, harmless, almost cultural. Many people reach for the same brands week after week without a second thought. That comfort is exactly the problem. Behind mass-market lagers are industrial shortcuts, cost-driven brewing decisions, and designs that quietly encourage overconsumption. These beers are not built for freshness, nutrition, or moderation. They are built for volume, shelf life, and speed of drinking. When alcohol is stripped of flavor, character, and warning signs, intake rises without awareness. This video breaks down 8 Canadian beer brands that normalize excess, hide quality decline, and train habits that cost more over time than most drinkers realize. 8. Molson Canadian. Molson Canadian is not just a beer, it is a symbol. It is wrapped in national identity, hockey ads, flags, and familiarity. That image is exactly why it deserves scrutiny. When a product is consumed casually by millions, small compromises scale into mass exposure. Molson Canadian is one of the highest volume beers in the country. That alone changes the risk equation. What might be tolerable occasionally becomes problematic when it is habitual, normalized, and unquestioned. This beer is brewed for consistency, not freshness. It is engineered to taste the same everywhere, every time, regardless of how long it sits in warehouses or on store shelves. That requires heavy processing. Filtration strips out compounds that naturally occur in beer. Pasteurization extends shelf life at the expense of character. The result is a product that survives distribution, not one that reflects quality brewing. What you gain in stability, you lose in integrity. Molson Canadian is also brewed in multiple facilities. That increases oxidation risk. Beer is sensitive to oxygen exposure, which degrades flavor and aroma over time. Industrial brewing minimizes these issues statistically, not individually. A bottle that tastes fine is not proof of freshness. It is proof of processing. You are drinking a product designed to tolerate neglect, not reward care. The alcohol-to-flavor ratio matters more than most people realize. Molson Canadian is thin by design, low bitterness, minimal malt presence, easy drinking. That combination encourages faster consumption. You do not feel full. You do not slow down naturally. You open another without noticing. That is not an accident. It is how mass-market beer maintains volume. This beer does not ask you to think. That is exactly the problem. If Molson hides risk behind familiarity, the next beer is worse because it strips even more substance away while increasing consumption speed. 7. Labatt Blue. Labatt Blue represents industrial brewing taken to its logical extreme. It is designed for maximum distribution, maximum consistency, and maximum volume. Every choice made in its production serves one goal: scale. When beer becomes a logistics product instead of a craft, quality becomes secondary. What matters is how cheaply it can be made, how widely it can be shipped, and how quickly it can be consumed. One of the most important details people overlook is the use of adjunct grains. Labatt Blue relies on corn and rice to reduce costs. These ingredients lighten the body and thin the flavor. That might sound minor, but it has real consequences. Less flavor means less sensory feedback. You drink faster because there is nothing slowing you down. The beer goes down easily, and that ease is the trap. Thin body also means reduced satiety. Your stomach does not register fullness the way it would with a more substantial beer. Alcohol enters the bloodstream without resistance. Calories accumulate without satisfaction. This is how people drink more than intended without realizing it. Labatt Blue does not demand attention. It disappears while you consume it. Labatt is owned by a multinational corporation whose business model depends on volume growth. Health is not part of that equation. Responsibility messaging exists, but the product itself is engineered for repeat use. Long shelf life means extended storage. Heavy filtration means stripped character. Aggressive carbonation masks flatness and age. These are not flaws, they are design choices. Alcohol consumed without friction is alcohol consumed in excess. That is the real risk. Labatt Blue does not feel heavy. It does not feel strong. It feels empty. That emptiness invites repetition. 1 becomes 3. 3 becomes 6. Not because you planned to, but because nothing told you to stop. The calories add up. The dehydration compounds. Sleep quality drops. Liver workload increases. None of this triggers alarm because the beer feels benign. That is the most dangerous trait a product can have. The core concern with Labatt Blue is silent overuse. Cheap inputs enable high margins. High margins fund wider distribution. Wider distribution normalizes behavior that would feel excessive with a stronger, fuller beer. You are not drinking for enjoyment. You are drinking because the product disappears as you consume it. Labatt Blue does not harm you by force. It harms you by design. If Labatt trains your body to drink without noticing, the next brand pushes this strategy further by removing even more resistance entirely. 6. Budweiser, Canadian production. Budweiser is often mistaken for a premium beer because of its history, branding, and price positioning. In reality, it is neither craft nor premium. It is optimized alcohol delivery. In Canada, Budweiser is brewed under license using the same industrial model applied worldwide. That model prioritizes speed, consistency, and cost efficiency, not brewing integrity. What you are drinking is not tradition, it is a formula. One of the most important compromises is the use of rice adjuncts. Rice replaces a significant portion of barley malt. This reduces cost and lightens the body, but it also strips flavor, texture, and nutritional complexity. Barley malt contains compounds that slow drinking and provide fullness. Rice does the opposite. It makes beer thinner, easier to consume, and faster to absorb. That is not accidental. It is functional. Aggressive carbonation is used to mask this thinness. Carbonation provides the illusion of crispness while hiding the absence of substance. It creates bite without body. That sensation tricks the palate into perceiving freshness and quality where very little exists. Once the carbonation dissipates, there is almost nothing underneath. The beer disappears, and with it goes any natural cue to slow down. Budweiser's alcohol content is delivered efficiently because there is minimal resistance. There is no bitterness to pause you, no malt sweetness to satisfy you, no complexity to linger on. Each sip clears the palate instantly, inviting the next. Alcohol enters the bloodstream quickly, often faster than the drinker realizes. That gap between consumption and perception is where overuse begins. Marketing fills the void left by the product. Budweiser sells identity, heritage, sports, national pride. Those associations are powerful enough to override scrutiny. People defend the brand emotionally without examining the liquid itself. The beer becomes secondary to the image. When branding becomes stronger than product integrity, the consumer loses leverage. Budweiser does not encourage appreciation. It encourages repetition. That repetition is profitable. For the drinker, it is quietly corrosive. If Budweiser hides its emptiness behind branding, the next beer is worse because it trains you to drink even more without noticing. 5. Coors Light. Coors Light is often chosen because it feels safer, lighter, cleaner, less impactful. That perception is the danger. Light does not mean low impact, it means low resistance. Coors Light is engineered to remove almost every natural signal that tells your body to slow down. What remains is alcohol delivery wrapped in reassurance. Flavor is intentionally minimal. Bitterness is muted. Malt presence is nearly absent. There is nothing to anchor the palate. Without flavor weight, the brain does not register consumption the same way. You drink faster because there is no sensory friction. This is why people routinely consume more light beer than regular beer without feeling the difference until later. The dehydration effect is amplified. Alcohol itself is dehydrating, but Coors Light compounds this with low mineral content. There is little left in the beer that contributes to balance or retention. Water passes through quickly. Alcohol does not. The result is dehydration without satiety. Thirst increases, and people drink more beer to compensate, not realizing they are deepening the cycle. Because it feels lighter, Coors Light is often consumed in larger quantities. The cans are cold. The taste is neutral. The body does not push back. 6 becomes 8. 8 becomes 10. Not because the drinker intends excess, but because nothing in the beer signals caution. That is not a coincidence. It is design. The brewing process further strips character. Heavy filtration removes proteins, oils, and compounds that give beer identity. What remains is alcohol, carbonation, and water. This makes the product stable, shelf-friendly, and easy to distribute. It also makes it forgettable. Forgettable products are dangerous when they contain alcohol. The core concern with Coors Light is behavioral training. It teaches drinkers that alcohol can be consumed without consequence. It normalizes volume over intention. When people associate lightness with safety, they lower their guard. The product exploits that assumption. Light beer does not reduce harm. It redistributes it across more units, more nights, more years. If Coors Light teaches your body to ignore alcohol's impact, the next brands remove even the illusion of moderation entirely. 4. Sleeman Original Draft. Sleeman Original Draft is positioned as a bridge between craft credibility and mass-market convenience. That positioning is precisely what makes it risky. It markets itself on heritage, tradition, and Canadian brewing identity. Yet the beer itself is produced using modern industrial shortcuts designed to maximize shelf life and minimize cost. What you taste is not craftsmanship. It is consistently engineered to feel familiar. Pasteurization is central to this process. While pasteurization improves stability and distribution range, it also degrades freshness. Heat treatment dulls volatile aroma compounds and flattens malt character. What remains is a smooth, neutral profile that feels easy to drink but lacks depth. That smoothness is not the result of quality ingredients. It is the result of processing. Heavy filtration compounds this effect. Filtration strips proteins and natural compounds that contribute to body and satiety. Without those elements, the beer becomes thinner and less filling. Thin beer moves faster. It encourages additional consumption because the body does not register fullness or satisfaction. The drinker feels comfortable drinking more without realizing why. Storage time matters more than most consumers understand. Sleeman Original Draft is often stored for extended periods before consumption, particularly outside major urban centers. Beer is not wine. It does not improve with age. Oxidation during storage dulls flavor further, leaving behind a generic sweetness and muted bitterness. What people interpret as smoothness is often staleness masked by processing. The brand's greatest strength is familiarity. Familiarity lowers scrutiny. When a beer tastes the same every time, consumers stop evaluating it. Drinking becomes habitual rather than intentional. Habitual drinking is rarely moderate. It is repetitive. The beer does not demand attention. It disappears quickly, and the next one follows without pause. The core concern is not that Sleeman is extreme. It is that it is invisible. Industrial shortcuts are hidden behind heritage language. Consumers believe they are choosing tradition when they are actually consuming a highly processed product optimized for predictability. Predictability benefits the producer. For the drinker, it removes cues that encourage moderation. Sleeman Original Draft does not challenge consumption. It facilitates it. That is what makes it dangerous. If Sleeman hides industrial shortcuts behind familiarity, the next beer is worse because it combines strength with the same false sense of safety. 3. Moosehead Lager. Moosehead Lager is often defended because it is independent. That independence creates an assumption of care, restraint, and integrity. Independence, however, does not automatically translate to safety. Moosehead operates at mass scale, and its risks come not from neglect, but from how its strength and familiarity interact with consumer behavior. Moosehead is frequently perceived as a stronger, more robust alternative to mainstream lagers. That perception encourages different drinking behavior. Drinkers expect more flavor, more bitterness, more impact. What often follows is faster consumption driven by balance rather than restraint. The bitterness is clean, not challenging. It sharpens the profile without slowing intake. Alcohol perception matters more than alcohol content. When bitterness balances alcohol well, the body does not register strength as clearly. Drinkers underestimate how much they are consuming because the beer does not feel heavy. That gap between perception and reality is where excess develops. People believe they are drinking deliberately when they are not. Despite its independent branding, Moosehead still relies on mass-scale production techniques. Filtration, stabilization, and consistency controls are necessary at its volume. Those techniques reduce variability, but they also reduce natural signals of satiety. The beer remains easy to drink regardless of quantity. Ease is not neutral when alcohol is involved. Ingredient sourcing transparency is limited. While the brand emphasizes Canadian identity, consumers are given little information about sourcing standards, agricultural inputs, or processing thresholds. That opacity matters. Without transparency, drinkers rely entirely on trust and reputation. Reputation does not regulate alcohol intake. Because Moosehead is perceived as higher quality, drinkers may justify consumption more easily. They frame it as preference rather than habit. That psychological framing reduces self-regulation. When alcohol feels earned or deserved, limits soften. The core concern with Moosehead is not misconduct or deception. It is an underestimation. Strength combined with familiarity creates a blind spot. Drinkers think they understand the beer. That confidence is rarely questioned. Over time, alcohol load accumulates without conscious adjustment. Moosehead does not force excess. It allows it. That distinction matters. Products that allow excess are often more dangerous than those that advertise it. The risk is not immediate. It is gradual. That is why it persists. If Moosehead normalizes stronger drinking through familiarity, the next brands remove even the perception of restraint altogether. 2. Lucky Lager. Lucky Lager sits at the extreme low end of the beer market, and that positioning drives every risk attached to it. The defining feature is price. When beer is cheaper than bottled water in some regions, consumption patterns change immediately. Quantity replaces consideration. Drinking becomes casual, frequent, and unmeasured because the product signals that restraint is unnecessary. Ultra-cheap pricing leaves no room for ingredient investment. Malt bills are minimized, adjuncts dominate, and flavor complexity disappears. What remains is a thin, lightly sweet liquid designed to move quickly. Thin beer does not slow consumption. It removes friction. Each sip requires no attention, no pause, and no evaluation. Speed becomes the default behavior. Minimal flavor also removes sensory warning signs. Rich malt, bitterness, or aroma normally act as cues that trigger awareness. Lucky Lager offers none of these. The drinker does not register fullness or intensity. Alcohol enters the system quietly. When awareness lags behind intake, overconsumption follows without deliberate intent. Because Lucky Lager is often purchased in large quantities, exposure compounds rapidly. 12 packs and when larger formats are common. Bulk purchasing lowers psychological cost per unit. Each additional beer feels insignificant. This framing encourages extended sessions rather than deliberate stopping points. Alcohol calories accumulate silently in this environment. Low-flavor beers do not satisfy hunger or replace food. Drinkers continue eating normally while adding alcohol calories on top. Over time, this pattern stresses metabolic health and weight regulation without obvious signals in the moment. Lucky Lager is rarely chosen intentionally. It is chosen because it is there, affordable, and familiar. Familiarity lowers scrutiny. Affordability removes hesitation. Together, they normalize frequency. What feels like a harmless habit becomes a repeated exposure pattern that escalates quietly. That delay between cause and consequence is why damage accumulates unnoticed, long after habits have solidified and warnings no longer register. By the time concern appears, consumption patterns are already deeply entrenched and resistant to change. For most, if Lucky Lager normalizes excess through price, the next beer removes even minimal resistance by stripping awareness entirely from drinkers. 1. Old Milwaukee. Old Milwaukee represents the final stage of cost-driven beer design. Every element of this product is optimized to disappear. Flavor is minimal, aroma is faint, and body is almost absent. The beer does not ask to be tasted, it asks to be swallowed. That design choice has serious consequences. Thin body removes natural pacing. Without malt structure or bitterness to slow intake, the drinker consumes quickly. The beer provides no sensory friction. Each sip feels the same as the last, creating a loop that encourages continuous drinking without pause. When nothing changes, awareness fades. Ingredient quality reflects aggressive cost minimization. Lower grade inputs and heavy processing produce a neutral profile that survives transport and storage but offers no freshness cues. Oxidation is harder to detect because there is little flavor to lose. Staleness becomes invisible. This invisibility is dangerous. Flavor normally acts as feedback. When flavor is absent, feedback disappears. Drinkers rely on volume rather than sensation to judge intake. That leads to binge patterns where quantity replaces experience. The beer becomes a delivery system rather than a beverage. The lack of sensory warning signs also masks physical stress. Drinkers do not feel heavy or full. Alcohol enters the bloodstream without clear signals. Dehydration, electrolyte imbalance, and caloric load accumulate quietly. The body pays attention later, often after habits are established. Brand age contributes another layer of risk. Old Milwaukee has existed for decades. Longevity creates trust through familiarity, not through quality. Consumers assume survival equals safety. In reality, survival reflects efficient cost control and market positioning. Because the beer does not challenge the palate, it rarely triggers reflection. There is no moment that prompts the drinker to stop and consider quality or impact. Drinking continues until an external factor intervenes. That is not moderation, it is automation. The core danger of Old Milwaukee is not a single ingredient or process. It is the complete absence of cues that normally regulate drinking. When alcohol arrives without sensation, limits erode. The less you notice the beer, the more space it has to do harm. Over years, this pattern reshapes expectations. Drinkers come to associate beer with numbness rather than enjoyment. That shift increases reliance on quantity for effect. What once felt optional becomes routine. Routine drinking driven by invisibility is difficult to reverse because nothing feels wrong until consequences appear. By then, consumption habits are deeply set and harder to confront honestly later. After these beers, the pattern is clear. Lower awareness and lower quality steadily remove limits until excess feels unavoidable everywhere. Before we proceed further, subscribe, like, and comment why you like this video for a chance to win a new Apple MacBook.